Well, welcome to another edition of Unplugged, one where we'll preview what is hopefully not our final game of the season. We'll obviously look forward to Friday night and then hopefully beyond, barring a calamity. But it was a very tough night to take last Thursday. We went live. We obviously haven't spoken since that particular game. It was a crucial opportunity. Another one missed. We've had some painful losses this year, but that would be close to the top of the tree, that the frustration that sort of stemmed from it. Losses are obviously particularly hard to take when there's what-ifs and near misses. And St Kilda, in a tennis parlance, had the game on their racket halfway through the last quarter and just squandered a couple of opportunities. And the Eagles were able to nail theirs and won the game. But you spoke about 10 being the magic number. It's now crunch time. We've got what is our most important game in nearly a decade on Friday night against the GWS Giants. And we'll hear from Brett Ratton a little bit later on and the message that he sent the players, but it is a message that is very, very true. You live for these moments. You want to be nervous. You want to be anxious. You want to be a little bit fearful about all of those possibilities. It's much, much better than having the season done and dusted and you're talking about, oh, yeah, this guy finished the year well and hopefully next year goes okay for us. We're in a position now where we've still got, hopefully, a chapter to write on this journey. And you wouldn't trade that feeling for anything, as much as we wish that the finals berth was already secured. But we'll obviously watch with nerves and anticipation. But a 15-point loss to the West Coast Eagles, where unfortunately the Saints very, very wasteful in front of goal right when it mattered most. H, your summation of that, I must admit, I know it's difficult in lockdown, but just wanted to go for a long, long walk after that game, but such is the frustrations of the year, you can't.
Yeah, just add it to that list of games that were there for us to take, but yeah, we just couldn't quite do it in the end. It's just one of those what-if years at the moment, and hopefully we're not looking back next week going, well, what if this happened? So we've got something to look forward to next week, but West Coast is a team that you go any other time or you lost by only that much or put up that sort of fight, you'd be like, great. But it was really an opportunity to take them last week with who they were missing. And it, as I said, just one of those ones that we'll look back and go, hopefully that didn't cost us.
You mentioned it earlier, Parko, about how frustrating it was. And you're right. I think that was probably my most frustrating game of the year, mainly because of the fact that we started pretty well, and then those two middle quarters, second and third quarters we were goalless. Didn't kick a goal for 2 quarters in a row, and somehow at 3/4 time we're still in the game. We're only a couple of goals down, and then miraculously we come out firing the last. We get ahead. We're 8-10 points up, and let it slip. And normally when a team comes from behind in the last quarter and is able to wrestle that momentum away from the leading team, that's enough. You've got the game then. You don't give it up. And somehow we managed to snatch defeat out of the jaws of victory once again. And, it was just super, super frustrating because even despite those scoreless quarters, we had more inside 50s, more clearances. We spent more of the game in front, even not kicking a goal for 2 quarters in a row. We spent more of the game in front and we still lost after getting ahead in the last quarter. And it was just, very frustrating. I don't know how you lose a game like that.
Well, we had, when we were 8 points in front, when we were 7 points in front, from that point on, I think we had 4 scoring shots and they had 4 scoring shots. We kicked 4 behinds and they kicked 4 goals. And obviously there were a couple of tough misses. I mean, Max King missed a set shot that wasn't easy and he missed a hurried snap that was difficult for obviously a big man. But from, I guess the key moment in the game when we talk about what ifs is, when we were 7 points in front, we kicked the ball across goal. Brad Hill, who's the most skillful player in the team, picked it up 10 metres out, almost directly in front. And I remember actually just thinking, watching that game, I'm like, game over. It was the one where you thought, well, we've got them on the ropes. We're just hammering them and hammering them and hammering them. And as soon as it hit Brad Hill's boot, you thought, done. 13 points up. They're not coming back from there. We've kicked 5 in a row or something like that. Gone. And they kicked the goal immediately from the kick-in. So they went coast to coast and kicked the goal. And then they went straight out of the centre bounce and kicked the goal. So they probably had 3 possessions in 30 seconds and kicked 2 goals. And all of a sudden the game was over the other way. And just the deflating nature of that, where it was like, and it's not putting it all on Brad Hill, obviously, because they kicked 6 goals, 14, but it went from the ball was in our hands, the game is over, to 30 seconds later, the game was over, but the other way, and it was extraordinary.
Yeah, looking back at the third quarter, I sort of think that might have been more the opportunity we missed. It seems like that end was probably the better end to be kicking to. And we've gone out and we won that quarter 4 points to 3. We changed 2 to 3 of those goals, points to goals, and the game turns on its head completely. It's just opportunity. That's the one thing we wasted, and we've been so good in front of goal up until around about this point. I mean, I've noticed a few teams are probably starting to drop off a bit now, it seems, but we were the best kicking team in the league, and we've fallen back to the pack a bit now, it seems. So just, those opportunities, if we'd taken them, we'd be in a different situation right now.
Yeah, I mean, you're both right. I mean, Parker, like you said, you can't blame it on Brad Hill, even though that goal, had he kicked that goal, it's probably game over. But the reality is that between, we kicked 6-14. Between Max King and Zach Jones, that's 0 goals, 7 behinds. Any one of those really makes the difference of winning the game or not, because at some point during the game, it becomes too much to overcome, too much for them to keep running, too much to keep chasing. We shot ourselves in the foot again. And, the first half of the year, we were so good. Like you said, H, we were so good. We were so efficient. We moved the ball in and we were taking shots from parts of the ground that are very effective, very efficient parts of the ground.
Goal square.
Yeah, that's right. To take shots from. And I think over the last few weeks, it's not just this week, we kicked 11-14 against Melbourne, or against Hawthorn, I should say. And over the last month, I think our kicking has gone back to average, probably regressed a fair way. I wonder if that's, we spoke last week about the potential of the young group getting tired, and that the delivery of ball into forward 50 is not as good as it was in the first half of the year. And our goal kicking is not the same. I wonder if our guys are just cooked.
Yeah, and I hope not. Absolutely. I mean, you look at the nature of it. I mean, we had a 4-day break, but so did they, and they had a lot of quick turnarounds, but you never know exactly how one side would handle it and how another will. I mean, statistically speaking, the first 10 minutes of every quarter, we dominated of all 4 quarters, and then got outplayed after that. I actually sort of looked it up. In the first 10 minutes of every quarter, even though we didn't score in the second quarter, we actually dominated the first 8 to 10 minutes of it. We had 7 or 8 inside 50s in a row, and I worked out in the first 10 minutes of all 4 quarters of the game, we had 28 inside 50s to 4 and kicked 5 goals, 8 to a point in the first 10 minutes of each quarter of the game. And then I think we kicked 1 goal, 6 to 9 goals, 10 for the rest of the game. So what we put that down to, I'm not 100% sure, but obviously this week we've got an 8-day break, whereas the Giants have a 6-day break. So hopefully 8-day break, 4-day break, 8-day break means that the 2 freshen-ups just helps them a little bit. But yeah, clearly those inside 50s, the getting it to 60, 70. It had a lot of the 2019 type thing about it, where it would be quite bomby without direction and then scrambling shots at goal under pressure. And I think they spoke about how it was one of our guys that we had on, the analytical guys from the club, whose name escapes me, said that our set shot accuracy was actually pretty good. It was our general play accuracy that was a concern, and that was clearly the case on the weekend. We missed so many snaps and hurried shots at goal. The majority of our goals sort of came either in a scramble in the goal square or from, opportunistic set shots like Membry in the first quarter. So just got to get a little bit more direction. We've only got to get it right one more time, and you still get the feeling that, if you could get it right that one time and then have a week off and then play a final, you'd be a chance against anybody in that first week on the back of it. But I guess full stopping that one before we look at GWS votes. I think we're doing it in the ascending order, aren't we, Nick? What did you want to look at vote wise? Yeah,
that's right. And just before we get to that, shout out to Darren O'Shaughnessy, who's the analytics guy that you mentioned, Parker, who came on our show very early this year or very late last year and gave us great insight into what an analyst at a footy club does and trade period and draft and all that sort of stuff. So get around that and have a listen if you're interested. But yeah, votes was tough. I did find it really tough. I gave 1 vote to Jack Sinclair. I thought his ball use and the way that he moved the ball forward was very good. Brad Hill again had I guess a bit of a down week after the couple of weeks earlier where he'd been pretty good. But I thought this was certainly not his best game. And Jack Sinclair picked up the slack on the wing in that regard. I gave 2 to Hunter Clark. 2 and 3. These 2 and 3 could have been switched really. I thought Hunter Clark and Jack Steele were the 2 best players on the ground. Clark just continues to impress with his toughness and his ability to find the ball, but also the way that he gets it. He's a lot harder than he used to be. I think in his first couple of years he kind of didn't put the head over the ball enough. But right now he does everything right. Head over the ball, hits the player, hits the contest, and delivers beautifully. He got the 2 votes, and Jack Steele, yeah, just does everything. I don't think I need to say much about what Jack Steele does for us. He's just on the verge of being a superstar.
Yeah, Sinclair is not. I noticed him a bit during the game. I was a bit like, oh, okay. He had a good game. I wasn't really one I actually looked at the votes, but you've mentioned him now, and I'm sort of like, yeah, okay, he could have got in there, but I actually only went 1 to Jack Steele. I felt like he does what he does. And I mean, we love it. We absolutely love it. He could almost get 3 every week the way he plays. I just didn't feel he had as much influence on the game that he has previous weeks. He gave great service as we see every week, but it just didn't have that big impact that he usually does have. 2 to, I agree with Clark, gave him the 2. Great game, gave us a lot of use of the ball down back. Moves it beautifully, moved through the midfield beautifully as well. But for impact on the game, I actually gave 3 to Paddy Ryder. I don't think he only matched Nick Nat. I feel like he actually beat him. He gave us first use where we could. He, in parts of the game, I felt like he actually took Nick Nat out of the game, and I just didn't feel like he normally does. But yeah, he took some real crucial marks. He kicked a pretty crucial point. But yeah, just took control of the game, and yeah, it pretty much showed Nick Nat the way to do it. But yeah, he worked with the midfielders, it feels like. So I really did like what he did for the game.
Yeah, I thought he was good, Paddy Ryder.
Yeah.
I thought he was good for 3 quarters, but I think that last quarter, Nick Nat, that was one of the differences in that last quarter, which is why, I mean, he was very close to a vote, certainly very close to a vote, but that last quarter, Nick Nat just seemed to own, just away from us.
Yeah, I had Ryder and Sinclair certainly very close to votes. I actually gave 1 vote to Dougal Howard, who I thought played a pretty solid game for us. Obviously, that rundown in the goal square, obviously, that denied the Eagles a goal in the 3rd term, and some of his defensive efforts in the last couple of weeks have been pretty solid. So that 1 vote could have gone a number of ways, but I squeezed Dougal Howard in for that one. I gave 2 votes to Jack Steele, again, for his consistent influence around the ball, solid as a rock, and really makes mistakes and set up a lot of scores in that last quarter, and 3 votes to Hunter Clark, who'd been pretty quiet the week before against Hawthorn, was, I think, rested rested for 1 game along the way there, the Brisbane game, I think, and then was a bit quiet against Melbourne, and obviously going back into the middle had a really big influence. So for me, 3 votes to Hunter Clark, 2 to Jack Steele, and 1 to Dougal Howard, as we bring in our special guest who had enormous success at Hawthorn, but holds a very, very special place in the hearts of St Kilda supporters. I speak of Russell Greene.
Bottom takes the mark, his 10th. Kick to centre half forward, Jelly unmarked. Fancy a rover mark. Greene. Hunt is unmarked, the short passes to Rex Hunt. Well, this does give St Kilda a chance.
Well, our next special guest was a 300-game player, played 120 of those with the Saints before an additional 184 with Hawthorn, which included 3 premierships, an MVP of the competition, a 3-time All-Australian, a best and fairest. The Hawks, an AFL Life member, did return to St Kilda in a fitness capacity during the 90s as well, and a very popular Saints over the journey. I speak of Russell Greene. Russell, thanks very much for your time.
Darren and Aaron, thank you very much for having me on tonight. I jump at things like this. St Kilda were very good to me they sacked me halfway through one year, but the years prior to it were a lot of fun, and I got a lot of good memories. And unfortunately, one of the boys who I played alongside for a number of years, Jeff Dunne, is very unexpectedly at the age of 64 has passed away. He was a fantastic player, dual best and fairest in consecutive years. Just a wonderful player. So our hearts go out to his family and all those who know him, and all the St Kilda. And I'm sure the boys will be wearing their black armbands this week. And if the boys play exactly the way Dunne played, I'm sure the Saints will have a victory.
Yeah, I guess, can you sort of sum that up for us? Played 100 games for the club, as you said. He won a best and fairest in 79 and 80, so your second last, and then ultimately final year at the club. One of the Ballarat crew, one of the rich Ballarat crew that St Kilda recruited through the late 70s and the early to mid 80s. But can you paint the Jeff Dunne picture? Obviously wore number 48 for a while, which is a very high AFL number, before settling on a single-digit number 8 a bit later on. But can you take us through Jeff Dunne?
Yeah, well, he was just an exceptional player. Paint a picture. I think I could be wrong, but I reckon if he was playing today's footy off the halfback flank or the back pocket, the way it's dispersed now, the way they go laterally, Dunne would average 35, 40 touches a week. He was just used to be able to always get into the right spot. And I think if you go through Wikipedia and look at his stats, he'd be around 20 plus possessions a week, which when we play, Darren, if you average 20 possessions a week as an on-baller, you're doing exceptionally well. And he was averaging that up back. Now, with that type of flair and flamboyant type of play, sometimes the little Rovers might kick a couple of goals, but his ability to get the ball, feed it off, and use it in a positive manner far outweighed the other side, where the occasional goal would seep through. But he was an amazing player. Head over the footy, attacking, good skills, never wasted the ball, and a fantastic team player. Had a great mate of Graham Jelly, who in 1978, actually, Dunne was Crowy. Graham Jelly's nickname was Crowy. He won the best and fairest in 78. And I think they were best man at each other's weddings. So Crowy's just had a hip replacement, and he's got gout, and which is not allowing him to do his rehab. So he's in a bad place at the moment. We're all getting behind him because he's an absolutely fantastic person. But getting back to Dunne, amazing player. Number 8, yeah, I always wore long sleeves. I don't think I ever saw him once in short sleeves, a bit like a Michael Tuck.
Yeah, no, all the best to the Dunne family and the Jelly family, as you just said, Russell. But let's go back to the beginning. You were 15 when you were recruited to St Kilda. You made your debut as a 16-year-old. What was that like?
It was Nick. There was no money in when we played. I think I played 22 games my first year in 1974, and I think it was a cultural rule. The VFL, then you had to, I think it was $45 a game. I think my paycheck at the end of the year was $1,200, but I would have done it for nothing, Nick. There was a lot of the boys from Frankston who would come up and train and play. One of my teachers, John Locko, actually tried out at St Kilda, I think in 1974 also, but he did his knee, did an ACL. He used to drive me to training. If I couldn't get to training by lift, I would catch a train to Moorabbin, get off the train and walk across the road, and there was this fish and chip shop, and I'm still good mates with a fellow called Jim's fish and chip shop. I'd have a couple of dim sims and a couple of potato cakes before training. So it was very, very little bit different to what it is now, of course, dietitians and that sort of thing. But yeah, it was a different world. And all I ever wanted to do, Nick, ever since I was a young kid, was to play a game of VFL football, AFL football as it is known now. And I was a mad Collingwood supporter. But as soon as I was drafted by a fellow called John Isles, who was recruiting one of the 3 full-time staff at the club at that stage, John Isles and another fellow called Ian Drake, who actually ran the place, nicknamed Porridge for obvious reasons. If you've ever seen Uncle Toby's porridge thing, that's what Porridge. Great fella. Yeah, very fortunate. Great memories. Still have a lot of fond memories and a lot of good mates who I was involved in at that time.
So, as Nick was saying, you get there very young. A couple of the premiership players were still hanging on at that point at the club. There was a few of the younger ones who played in the premiership. Who were some of the ones you looked up to when you first got there? Who did any take you under their wing, or how did you?
Yeah, absolutely.
How'd you fit in?
Yeah, a fellow called Gary Collin, still a great mate of mine. And he actually taught me in a little Volkswagen, not column shift on the floor, drive to training. That's how I actually got my license. Cat took me under his wing in that regard. He was a Frankston fella, 265 games plus captain of the side in 1 year, 1978, I think. Just a fantastic fella. And it's people like those who I still remain close to. He was fantastic. But the premiership players who were still there were Minot, Bugsy Moran, Cowboy Neil, Greene was there. Greene, yeah. And they were all nurturing, fantastic fellas. I never ever heard any of them bagging. It was just a fantastic environment, and you had the Alan Jeans influence still there. They were tight. They had the nucleus of that premiership unit that most of them were getting near the end. Dittrich, I think, came back in 78, and here's a blast for you boys. Something that you probably wouldn't realise. Bob Murray came back and played. He was VFA then, but if there was a bye or something like that in the VFA, you could come back and rock it. Bob Murray came back for one game, and also the great number 3, Ross Smith, my coach down the track in 1977. So I played with quite a handful of the superstars at St Kilda and premiership players, and hopefully this year they'll have another 22 who can join them.
Yeah, we've been waiting for that for a while, I guess. But 1978, always an interesting year to talk about from a St Kilda point of view. They started so well, obviously won 5 of the first 7. There was a somewhat controversial or famous win against Essendon at Moorabbin, and then for whatever reason the wheels fell off, and then the wheels were put back on again. We won a stack of games at the end of the year against really good opposition and just missed the finals. Was 1978 a big missed opportunity for the
we started off really, really well, and then there was a bit of a lull. I think it was about 6 or 7 games that we dropped. Now, you know what the real turning point was? You probably don't realise this, that I missed the last 6 games and they won every game after that. So I'm out injured. I had a knee done. Had to beat Carlton at the end of the last game, and then I think one other side, Geelong, was playing Fitzroy or someone like that. But there was an upset, and so the Saints missed that. And I honestly believe if St Kilda got in that year, they would have been. They had tremendous momentum going. Sidebottom, George Young, Crowe, he was Dunne. Everyone was firing, and it was just a shame that they missed out. Well, the Saints missed out in that last game.
So, what was the evolution of the club like? You mentioned when you joined the club, there was still that kind of nucleus of premiership players and those old heads, and then guys like you came in and some of the other kids, Jeff Dunne, like we said earlier, What was that evolution of his time through the 80s for St Kilda? What was it like towards that kind of the middle and the end of the 70s?
Yeah, well, Alan Jeans left, Nick, and he retired, and Ross Smith came on board, who I love, absolutely love. He's a fantastic fella. But bit by bit, all the senior players left the club or retired. And I think there was Barks, there was me, there was Robert Muir, Volperovic, and amongst there's a part there. And if you're going to have success, you must have really, really strong leaders. Your administration must be rock solid. Coaching staff must be found. When I first started there, that was the case. But then Jeansy retired and senior players dropped away. And all of a sudden, apart from Barks, there probably wasn't much leadership there. And then it's Alan Jeans used to paint he was amazing, his pre-match speeches and so forth, and a lot of analogies. And he said leadership is like having a piece of string. If you grab it from the top and you drag it along, everything else follows. It's nice and straight. Everyone's everyone's on board. But if you have no leadership and things push up from the bottom, everything buckles and there's no continuity or anything. So that's the biggest thing that I found. There was not a lot of leadership. As you mentioned, Nick, a lot of the senior players retired, moved on. Carl Dietrich, after 78, went back to Melbourne again. George Young went home to Western Australia. I think Rex Hunt retired. It was a lot of movement, not a lot of stability. And I think that is reflected. If you don't have the administration and coaching staff and your senior players rock solid, it's pretty hard to have success.
Now, you just mentioned Rex Hunt's name. It was actually a name that I was going to bring up in a few different players. I was going to mention you got a fair range of players who have done different things after playing for the club. So, I mean, as you're saying, Rexy finished up just before you finished up. Mick Malthouse was only just starting up before he headed off to Richmond later on. You had Rex, who later we know became a media superstar. You had the likes of Bill Mildenhall, who moved over to become an NBL referee. You had Mordecai Bromberg, who's now high in the court system. So it's quite a range of interesting people that you've played with. But who would be at the top there that you go, okay, that they were they're either strange or they were just someone really interesting to be around?
Well, Aaron left out one of the most intriguing ones. Remember Chris Stone? Chris Stone, 15, 20 games, or maybe that's been too complimentary. I'm not sure how many games. But he's now married to a princess or the Prime Minister of one.
Yep.
So
Sweden or Norway or something?
Yeah, so he's done pretty well. Mickey Malthouse is one of the best blokes you could ever meet. He moved from the Saints to Richmond because Wayne Judson was doing so well in the back pocket. And then, boys, when we played, if you were a halfback flanker, you played on the halfback flank. If you were a wingman, you played on the wing. If you're a half-forward flank, you didn't. It's not like it is now, like full-on utilities. Everybody's virtually has to play, unless you're a key position player, you play in those positions. But everyone else, now, you go everywhere. Whereas if Mick Malthouse, they wouldn't play Mick Malthouse on the halfback flank. They wouldn't play him on the wing. He was a back pocket player, so that's where and Wayne Judson was my first year. He came second, I think, in the best and fairest after Glenn Elliott, and was probably 4 years in a row Victorian representative. So Mick found it hard to break into on a regular basis. So he went to Richmond. Who were what was the other, Aaron? The other blokes? Hunty was. Now, what you see is what you get with Rex Hunt. I remember even before we were running out, he was cracking jokes and stuff like that. It was just. But once he was out on the ground, obviously he took it very seriously. He played in 2 flags with the Tigers, then went to Geelong, and then I think he came second in the Brownlow one year maybe, and then he ended up with us. And he went on to his fishing career, which is absolutely amazing. Morty Bromberg, I think Morty played about 15, or maybe ward number 15 after Morris O'Keefe left. So yeah, Morty played a handful of games, 20, but a really nice fellow, and he's now a High Court judge. Yeah, so I can't say they were quaint or anything like that, but there's not one bloke who actually there is, but I won't bring that up. If I saw him on the other side of the street, I'd certainly walk across and say, "How you doing?" and stuff like that. But I had a great time at the Saints, and it wasn't their fault that I got the sack; it was mine. So I have no axe to grind with the Saints.
A couple of things on that. I mean, I want to touch on the move in a minute because obviously that's an era of football that's different now, where you can play for two clubs effectively in the same season with a move like that. But I remember watching the Passion to Play, which is a documentary they made about 20 odd years ago, and you were one of the those that were interviewed in that, and you spoke about obviously the difference. You're at Hawthorn later, a very successful club, won premierships, won most weeks. You came from St Kilda, who were losing most weeks and struggling down near the bottom of the ladder. And I think you were teaching physical education at school through all of that, because it was in an era where you weren't full-time footballers. As you say, there wasn't a lot of money in it. What was it like then, where you lose a game, you go to work, and admittedly they're probably kids, but I think it now, if St Kilda lose a game, I go to work and you'll have people that'll hang it on you. What if you're a player? I mean, I guess for those players now, there'd be no notion of playing football on a Saturday and then going to work on a Monday. Did you cop sort of much stick or even much praise during that journey?
Yeah. The kids, Darren, are very honest. I taught at Melbourne Grammar for 30 years. I played there. I was working there when I won, not one, but was involved in 3 wooden spoons. So we didn't win many matches. I think one year when Smithy was coach, we won 1 and drew 2. Mike Patterson, 79, I think we only won a handful. Yeah, so, but the kids are honest, and they'll just give it to you. How come you didn't get a kick? How come you played on Dacos and he kicked 6 on you and stuff like that? So, yeah. It certainly kept you grounded. So, but I wouldn't change it for anything. Darren, I also remember when at the Hawks when we won the flag in '83. I went to work on Monday, and the footy season had obviously just finished, and they made a little special in '83 also. Boys, I was off the alcohol from the 1st of January all the way through to the grand final night. And the senior master, Kevin Harwood, he is the reason why I started at St Kilda anyway, Kevin Harwood. And he got out one of the school trophies and filled it up with beer. So he's called me out. So this is 9 o'clock in the morning at Melbourne Grammar, 2 days after the grand final. And he said, "Oh, Russell, we want to make we realise what you made sacrifices to achieve your goals and that type of. We've got a trophy here, and it's just got some lemonade in it." And so I'm just replicating what we did grand final day. And up we go. Oh, geez, there must have been a couple of VB cans in there. So it was, and you got kids out there who think I'm drinking lemonade. And yeah, but to answer your question, kids are honest. They don't beat around the bush. They tell you the way it is, and that's why I really appreciate it. But fortunately, I had more better games and really bad ones.
Russell, walk us through what happened in 1980. You played 8 games for the club, and then all of a sudden you're at Hawthorn. You alluded to the fact that the club sacked you. What happened in 1980? Okay,
so first 8 games, Nick, at playing for the Saints. The 8th and final game was down at Cardinia Park. I'm not quite sure what it's called now, down at Geelong anyway. And played on a bloke called Mickey Turner, and I must have got my pants pulled down again, and trained all week for the Saints, Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday under the great Jezza Linko, Alex, and picked in the team to play against Footscray. I drive home from Linton Crescent to my house 6-7 minutes. So I've gone from being told I'm playing on Doug Hawkins. 6 or 7 minutes later, I get home and my wife Roxy goes, "Don't go anywhere," because we had a dog. We used to take him for a walk when I got home. She said, "Don Scott is ringing you." I'm going, who's Don Scott? She says, well, he says he's from the Hawthorn Football Club. I go, are you serious? So anyway, I hung around for a couple of minutes. He rang back. He probably said about half a dozen words. Be down in Moorabbin tomorrow. See you in Drake. He's got your boots. You are now a Hawthorn player. I'm going, what? You're kidding. So anyway, I'll go down there at 10 o'clock. Ian Drake, who helped recruit me. I mean, I'm from Frankston with him, and he had a bit of a tear. I had a bit of a tear, and gave him my one pair of footy boots I think I had. And that was it. And then off we go to, I had to go meet the chairman of selectors at Hawthorn, and with David Parkin that night. And so on the Saturday morning, Roxy and I roll up at Waverley Park, where the players park. We get out of the car. The bloke on my left and the bloke on my right got out at the same time. And I looked to my left, and it's a bloke called Stephen Nick. He played for North Melbourne, a premiership player at North Melbourne. And he's looked at me, he's going, what are you doing? And then Lee Matthews is on my right. And Lee was vice captain, so he wasn't privy to match committee decisions. And I just looked at it, I said, Icky, mate, the game's been changed, mate. You're at the wrong game. He's going, what are you talking about? Mate, it's no, I said, look, mate, I'm sorry. I'm with a chunky little fella here. So the strangest sensation of all time, Lee, well, I think Lee must have walked in with me. Nicky, off he went. Stephen Nick, off he went. And Roxy and I, at those days, you only had to be in the room 1 hour prior to the game. Now it's 2.5 hours. So I sat up in the grandstand where the players sit. I didn't sit with the Hawthorn blokes. I sat aside from them. And because I've been playing for 7.5 years, I knew most of the blokes and they knew me. And they kind of looked at me going, what are you doing here? So anyway, at 5 to 1, grabbed my bag, walked down through the gate onto the Waverley Oval, up the race, walked into another world. I still don't remember who they said, here's your jumper. A bloke called Warren Lees wore 29 and he had left that year. So that was vacant. So they said, here's your jumper. But the worst thing was when I got there, Nick, it was they won 6 and lost 2. My first game became 6-3, 6 wins, 3 losses. My second game, 6-4. My third game, 6-5. The sixth game, my fourth game, 6-6. All of a sudden, I'm thinking everyone's going, oh, what's going on here? So my first win as a St Kilda player, guess who I played against?
As Hawthorn, you mean?
As a Hawthorn player.
Would have been against the Saints, I'm guessing.
The Saints. We played the Saints out at... Now, I've never hit anybody in my life, ever. And I remember running out, and I had tears in my eyes, because I've been there for 7.5 years. And I'm with a different group. They're not winning games. Saints aren't winning games. I just had so many memories. Some really, really good mates still playing there. Grant Thomas. I've never, ever hit anyone. I whacked Grant Thomas in the back of the head. We went for a mark or something. I rolled over. He's given me 3 or 4. And I said, no, that's enough. No more, no more. So that was the only punch I ever threw in my life on the footy field. But, yeah, it was very, very strange. Going from one club you've been at for 7.5 years and you loved, and then being moved on overnight. And I still haven't been told the reason why I got... Oh, look, I had a rough idea. As I mentioned before, there's not much leadership at the club, and I probably did a lot of silly things. So, but as I mentioned, it wasn't the boys' fault. That at the club, it was my fault.
But, yeah, so eventually you got to come back to the club again, though, like towards the late 90s, in a coaching fitness role at the club. Do you want to run us through what your role there was and how it all panned out and basically what you did there?
Well, Stewie Trott, who was my captain, I think, in my first or second year, he was football director, and I was at North Melbourne in a similar capacity for a couple of years. And he just said, look, mate, would you like to come back? Close to home, your old club were looking for someone down the track to take over the fitness thing. There was 2 other boys there in 96, and I was just an assistant to them. And then I was given the gig in 97. The only soft tissue we had was, I think it was Max Hudson. We were doing some series of surges and sprints down at Dendy Park, and that was the only soft tissue injury we had. Now, you know Robbie Harvey's nickname. Do you know what his nickname is?
Banger.
Banger.
Banger, yeah, yep.
He always used to do his hamstring. Never did one my entire time. We got through to the grand final, and then after the grand final, got called into the CEO's office, and he said, "Look, you are now the rehab coach for the reserves." I'm going, "Oh, okay, all right." So yeah, I spent 3 years. So I thought I did a pretty good job with a bloke called John Moncrief, but he got moved on halfway through the year too because of personality clash with probably the person who relegated me from my position to another position. So anyway, but there's no hard feelings at all. So I don't think he coached after that. But anyway, no drama.
I think that's fair. I guess the final one from me, I know that's one thing that stood out again in that documentary was obviously your genuine love of the game and how you wanted to sort of keep playing, and how it was obviously very difficult to let go of the fitness and the routine and all of that sort of stuff. I guess how important has the game been to you effectively since you gave it up? And I guess the second part of that question, your relationship with Alan Jeans, who obviously you started with and then finished with. He always spoke about the biggest challenge he ever faced was telling players that their time was up. He probably had that conversation with you in the late 80s. How did you go with Yab?
Yeah, absolutely. An amazing man. Darren, do you know why he's called Yabby?
I have heard the story, but I'm at a blank to it at the moment.
Yeah, he came from Finley, and his older brother's named Lobster.
Right.
So Yabby being younger, so called Yabby. The most amazing man in footy and probably in life that I've ever met. Spoke to him. We used to go, a whole lot of players used to go and have lunch at his place. Once they moved out of Cheltenham, they went to a retirement village. We'd go and visit him. One of the most amazing people, honest, brutally honest. He didn't duck from the hard decisions. I went and saw him in '87, Darren. The night he had his aneurysm, so he missed the entire year. Alan Joyce came on board. We won the flag in '88, which turned out to be my last game. I get a phone call from a bloke called John Hook, who was a football manager. He rang me on a Sunday, a week after the grand final. He's still, as high as a kite. And Hookie said, "Are you playing next year, Greene?" I said, "Oh, yeah, mate," because we really wanted to go back to back. We missed out in '84, '87 we missed out, and we won '88, and hopefully we get back to back. So I said, "Yep, I really want to play." I've had 2 knee replacements. I was gone. I was shot, but it's just an adrenaline rush to be able to play finals. He hung up 2 seconds later. They must have been in match committee, unless it was a huge, huge coincidence. So Yabby's rang. He said, "Hey, son, congratulations. So, "Oh, thanks, Yab. We're going to win back-to-back, mate. We're going to win back-to-back." He said, "I don't believe that it is possible. It is possible. But you're not going to be on board." I've gone, "What? What am I going to be on board?" He said, "Listen, son, you've got a premiership medallion for Stephen. You've got a premiership medallion for Brent, and now one for Angie. 3 years enough for you. You've had an amazing career. I want you to coach the under-19s." I'm going, "Oh, yeah." Anyway, we finished. It was very pleasant. There was no swearing or anything like that. So at this stage, Yabby hadn't been reinstated as the senior coach. So I rang Alan Joyce, who coached in that '88 premiership side. I said, "Joycey, am I in your plans for next year?" He said, "Exactly the same as this year. If you're good enough to get a game, you get a game." That was it. So I was hoping that he would get the nod. But in reflection, Darren. I mean, I would every Tuesday night I would go to Vimy House, which is a private hospital in Hawthorn, and I would have my left knee drained. I could only train on the Thursday. I knew I was gone, but just to be able to play footy, and I still have dreams of being called up to come back and play. I'm frantic looking for my footy boots, my mouth guard, and yeah, it was maybe if I went out on my own terms, I wouldn't have these ongoing, and I still have them. 30 odd years after. It was just such a even wooden spoons and the other stuff that I was fortunate to be involved in. It all shapes you as a person. You get to deal with real life matters probably a little bit better than if you didn't have those huge wooden spoons aren't pleasant to win, but they all shape you as a person. And I'm very, very fortunate. I would have played for nothing. I virtually did anyway, but I just loved footy as a kid. People ask me about the St Kilda Footy Club and the Hawthorn Footy Club. I say, look, St Kilda, I refer to St Kilda as like an old girlfriend. You respect her immensely. You have a lot of respect for her. You're good friends with her. But being a Hawthorn person, being involved with what I was involved in, yeah, I'm married to the Hawthorn Footy Club. But I still have a huge amount. I'm paid up of the past players. Still associate with a lot of blokes. And if I could just say this, Darren, Nick and Aaron, when you get to my age, it's so important that you have some bond. It could be a golf club, a tennis club. So important. And I'm very fortunate. I've got two AFL clubs, who are very close to my heart. And the older you get, the more you appreciate. So if you've got any old blokes out there watching, not necessarily don't have to be footballers, but for God's sake, have some involvement, because if you haven't got those structures in place, pretty hard to set up when you're 70, 75 to get involved in a golf club or a footy club or something like that. So any club that you can be involved in, any grouping of blokes or females or whatever is so important. So there's just
beautiful
old blokes out there.
Beautiful advice, and I reckon that's the second time in a couple of weeks we've had a Yabby Jeans impersonation, which is they're pretty close Morris? Actually. We had Russell Morris a couple of weeks ago. Did one that was very similar.
Oh, yeah. Now, do you know why he's called the Fly?
He did tell us. He gave us the rundown of that story.
Yeah.
Beautiful story.
Yeah, it was when he was Fly is a great mate of Chris Langford's. Now, the Fly would be up and about, prior to a game, and Chris Langford would be sitting there as though he's had 5 Valiums. This is even before finals and stuff like that. So it was two contrasts, two best mates. One's as high as a social butterfly, and Langers. But no, Russell Morris is a fantastic player at the Saints. Did exceptionally well there. I think all Australian representative, obviously Victorian representative, all Australian, and at Hawthorn, he was a really well-regarded person, and you couldn't have anyone better as your president of your past players. He's a fantastic fella. Loyal, unconditional support for everybody. No, he's a fantastic. The Fly, the social butterfly.
Last one from me, Russell, but my grandfather was a massive Hawthorn supporter, and often when he was alive told me about the fact that when you went to Hawthorn, you became just organically a much better player than when you're at St Kilda, and how much he loved watching you play. And the stats and history doesn't lie. I mean, you went on to win a Best and Fairest, 3 premierships, VFL Most Valuable Player Award. What was it that changed for your game when you went to Hawthorn?
Okay, I just got married, Nick. I only been married a couple of months, and before I got the sack. Remember, initially when we started having a chat, there's 3 very important ingredients when I was playing. And the administration was rock solid at Hawthorn. Senior players, you had Matthews, you had Don Scott, David O'Halloran, and the list, Kelvin Moore, the list just goes on and on. So the younger blokes, once they were involved in that environment, really blossomed. But you also got to remember, Nick, that the young blokes that came on board, with John Platten, Chris Langford, Chris Mute, Gary Buccanara. The list goes on and on and on and on. So although they still had those regular Tuck, these type of blokes, Brenton came on board as a young fella, Loveridge. I mean, it was like a wave. I mean, it was just a wave that started building from 82. We got beaten by Carlton in the preliminary final. And then for the next 8 out of 9 years, on grand finals and won 5 premierships. I became a better player. A more consistent player at Hawthorn, because every Thursday night I was on tender hooks, regardless if I played really well the week before. I was on tender hooks because the depth of the club was immense. And Jeansy always used to say, play 2 bad games, but don't play 3. If you play, then I remember in '86, I got drop played on Alan Ezard. I kept him to 4 goals in the first quarter, and then that was it. I got moved, or he didn't get moved. He got sat on the bench. So then the next 6 weeks, I'm in the 2s, and I was just doing anything possible to get back in. So the team batted really, really deeply. Great administration. Ron Cook, who was the president of Hawthorn Footy Club, he wasn't at that meeting when I was. When Don Scott rang, he was not at the meeting. So his proxy was a bloke called Trevor Coote, who went with the match committee for me to come across. So I ran into Ron 6 weeks after I got to Hawthorn. He came up to me. I didn't know who he was. And he put his hand out and shook my hand and said, "Russell, I'm Ron Cook. I'm the president." Grabbed my hand and pushed me really close to his chest. And he said, "I've got to tell you something. If I wasn't sick, if I wasn't in hospital, you wouldn't be here." And I've gone, "Oh God, I'm fairly honest, like that fella." So, but we became great mates after that. But the administration, senior players, the board, the whole thing, all gelled together, all worked together. And as I mentioned, Nick, you had 5 All-Australians coming into the side as young kids, and we played as a team. There was no individuals. It was just, looked after each other, helped each other. Amazing camaraderie. Every fortnight we go into the city, watch a movie together, take all the young kids in, just do some bonding stuff like that, which now probably doesn't seem that much, but in those days it was the way it was. So I was just very fortunate to be involved in 2 clubs. And I've got great memories. And as Yabby, another Yabbyism, all you got, son, after you finish is your memories. Make sure they're good ones. So vast majority of my memories, Nick, are pleasant ones.
Well, Russell, love your...
I probably ran my wife always told me.
Yeah, wonderful career, 300-game player, as we say. And thank you very much for joining us. It's an infectious love of the game, and I think we can all relate to it. So we very much appreciate all you did for the Saints and for giving us your time today.
Thank you very much, boys. Darren, Nick and Aaron.
I'm happy to be in this position. We are in the 8. We have a massive opportunity right in front of us. And if you said to me in November, you're only going to play 17 games, and you're going to be 9-7 with 1 game to go, and you're in the 8, I would have said, let's take it on. How many finals have you played? 7. JB, how many finals have you played? 0. Tim, how many finals have you played? 0. Here's your opportunity. And let's enjoy it. We can't look in that rear vision mirror. It's not going to change. We can learn the lessons. Let's look forward to this. This is exciting. There's a bit of pressure in it. We're going to look forward to that too. Do you reckon they're going to be under pressure? Bloody hell. That's what happens when you get to the pointy end of the year. It's pressure on 2 teams and people. We'll be under a little bit of stress. But that's where we can grow as a team and look forward to it. The challenge of it. It's a little bit of fear with it, but there's massive opportunity.
Well, first of all, it was the voice of Russell Greene, and then Brett Ratton with his message imploring the players to embrace the opportunity that sits in front of them ahead of this week against GWS, which is where we turn our attention now for this contest, guys. And the Giants just about gone. They'd have to beat us by 10 goals and then still have results probably go their way. So hopefully they see it that way. Obviously, with a small carrot there, you'd sense they'll still come out and fight for it. They haven't missed finals for 4 or 5 years, but obviously look a decent chance to do so here. Do they bring back Cornelio? You'd imagine Riccardi and those sorts of guys will play who they rested last week. For us, you'd think Carlisle has to play with Himmelberg, Cameron, Finlayson and potentially Riccardi in that forward line. And Dan Hanbury, a strong chance to come in, obviously with the loss of Zach Jones in the middle of the ground. So then it comes down to balance. Do they leave out someone like Kent or Loney to bring Carlisle in at the other end and get another tall? Hanbury clearly you'd think replaces Jones, and what else do they do from there? But H, selection-wise, what would you expect for this crunch game?
The obvious one is obviously Jones missing. It sounds like Hanbury's going to be back in. It's an interesting one to be bringing back in. I guess the experience is one of the keys for this week. Bringing Tom back in with the experience that he has in a crucial game that we're playing, it's something that hopefully will help us. Jones is a huge loss. He's got the experience at that time of the year as well. So, yeah, hopefully he can come in and actually pump us up a little bit, I guess. That could be the other thing. He's an old, fresh legs, I guess. He's been in there training. I think he's been in there. He's training with Ablett, and hopefully he's giving a good run around, and he's ready to go. But otherwise, I don't know how many changes are going to be made this week. It's go looking on last week's team. You could make a case to drop a lot of players in the team from last week. It's at the same time, I wouldn't really want to be changing too much. So it's going to be a whole thing of, I think our small forwards may have been a bit of a problem. I'm not sure whether the weather's going to be hot or slippery and wet or not this week, but we might want to be a bit taller again. And we sort of like, Hind and Kent didn't really have much of an impact on the game. So if they're going to be playing, we really need a big game from them. So, but they pretty much the only sort of players I'd be looking at to actually be changing.
It really is, a final game for us. I mean, we have to approach it like a final. Win and we're in, lose and we're out. I mean, I know it's not that simple. And there's obviously a few different machinations of results that can kind of change the format of the finals. But we have to approach this game in that manner. And obviously Hanbury, that tough, experienced, wise old head that he has, that will be very important. But it is a risk. We know about his injury history, especially over the last few years, and I guess they kind of have to weigh that risk up. Is his experience and toughness in the middle worth the possibility that he pings a hammy in the first 5 minutes and we're down a player for the rest of the game against one of the best midfields in the competition? I mean, we know that they're not playing at their best. We know they haven't had a great year, but they're still there and thereabouts, and they've got enough talent to worry any team on their day. So, we have to be wary. So it really is an interesting one. We've had a couple of questions from listeners on socials over the last little while asking about Jake Carlisle, and here's another obvious one. I think Carlisle should come back in. Why has he been out? I can't put a finger on why he's missed the last couple of weeks. I thought originally it was around matchups against Melbourne. They lost a couple of key forwards, and I thought maybe that's why they've dropped Carlisle, just for matchups, bringing a few smaller guys, medium guys in for a bit more run, for their forward line. But the fact that he hasn't come in makes me wonder if there's maybe a little bit more to it. And it's going to be really interesting to see if he's back in this week against what can be a really high-powered forward line. Because like I said, they haven't been at their best in 2020, but which team has? But they've certainly got enough firepower to worry any team.
Yeah, they certainly do. And it's a thing, you read their team on paper and you're bewildered by the fact that they're likely to miss the 8. But hopefully, I mean, they put a few rockets up their group this year and it hasn't necessarily worked. They dropped Cornelio and then still lost the game to Melbourne. They lost to Adelaide the few days earlier. So if you look at their form, who they've beaten and who they've lost to, it's the game that justifiably we would start favourites in. But as you say, it's a huge game. It's a huge pressure game. They've been in that position before and we haven't necessarily, which is what makes guys like Dan Hanbury and potentially Jake Carlisle so important. I know Carlisle can make mistakes, but I guess we picked 4 small forwards against West Coast: Kent, Hines, Loney and Butler. Butler obviously plays, but do they pick all of those? Is Kent, who only had 2 possessions, potentially the one that makes way? What do they do to someone like Vitale, maybe get a crack at it in the middle? But it is a huge, huge game for us. And I guess if you were to listen to questions, a good way to sort of segue into those via our Unplugged social channels, Unplugged podcast on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram and the like. But I guess a few questions on that. Clearly, we've got to get there first. But Benji asked, who would we rather play first week of finals, West Coast, the Bulldogs, the Giants, Collingwood or Melbourne? If I'm working it out on fixture, now I'm sure every one of those teams is possible, but realistically, if I'm doing the maths properly, West Coast, Collingwood and the Bulldogs are the only realistic options, I think. We either finish 8th and play the Eagles in Perth, unless somehow Adelaide beats Richmond, in which case we might play the Tigers, I think is a possibility. But it's likely to be West Coast in Perth. If we finish 8th and we finish 6th or 7th, we would play either Collingwood or the Western Bulldogs, I would think, depending on their results. So of that group, you'd probably rather play the Bulldogs based on the fact that we beat them earlier in the year. Your second option would be Collingwood and your third option would be West Coast in Perth, obviously. The only way we play West Coast in Perth is if we lose and hang on to our spot in the 8. So you wouldn't want to lose, say, 5 out of 7 and then have to play the Eagles in Perth. So a win and we finish either 6th or 7th and then play, you would think, Collingwood or the Bulldogs. So that kind of answers this. And I guess a question for both of you from Greg: would 9th be considered a pass mark, all things considered? My gut feel offhand would be no.
No, not where we were sitting. That's sort of where we look at it. If we'd been in the bottom 8 or whatever for most of the year and then finished in 9th, you'd be going, okay, we finished off all right. But we were sitting second on the ladder. To finish in 9th after sitting second on the ladder for almost a couple of weeks, you'd sort of go, look, okay, yeah, no, that's a little bit of a fail there. You get into the 8 and you consolidate yourself there. You don't want to fall out last round of the season. So yeah, I think 9th wouldn't be a pass mark, to be honest, with where we've come from.
Yeah, it's certainly a good question, because if you'd asked us this at this stage last year, coming from where we came from last season, you'd probably go, well, 9th is an improvement. We've certainly played better football. We've played much more attractive football for much of the year, more attacking, more offensive minded. We've moved the ball faster. We've become a good team to watch, and I think neutral fans of the game like watching us. We've seen that written in multiple publications over the season, so that's a positive. But yeah, like you said, H, I mean, we were second on the ladder and we were in the top 4 for a fair chunk of that middle part of the year, and to go from there to 9th would have to be disappointing. So perspective is perspective, right? Compared to last year on year, 9th is an improvement, and we certainly improved on much more than just ladder position. So there are some things there to be pleased about. But yeah, you'd have to be a bit disappointed. You'd have to be very disappointed for us to miss out in the finals. But I've got one, talking about Jake Carlisle before, I've got one from a friend of the show on Twitter, at Becca Hain, who says, aside from why do we do this to ourselves and buckle up again and again and again, that the question is thoughts and reflections on Jake Carlisle. We hardly knew you. And Guerrero Fred also said, yeah, where's Jake Carlisle? Do either of you guys have an idea of where he's been for the last few weeks?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, clearly, Cal Wilkie's a different type of defender, but Dougal Howard came in to play that key position role, and clearly it's a case of if they feel that they don't need to play 3 defenders, they only need to play 2 key tools, that they consider Jake Carlisle to be number 3 in that list, because Wilkie's got the versatility and and Howard's probably had a better year. So it's a tough one. I mean, Jake can have brain explosions when he plays, no doubt, but he's still a pretty good intercept marker. And I actually thought he played all right against Brisbane just before he obviously lost his place in the team. So it's a tough one. I think he has to play this week, and I think if we make the finals, he has to play in the finals based on structure and experience. But yeah, he will be the watch when the season ends as to what they do on that front, as to whether they look to, develop further some of these kids like Claverino or Logan Austin or something like that. But yeah, it's a strange one. I think he plays this week, but whether that answers any questions or not, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know myself. Something just doesn't feel right.
Mm.
It just doesn't seem like something's right there. That if everything was going smoothly, I think he would be playing. So it's just, yeah, it's a little confusing, and you sort of go, well, what is the best for the club right at the moment? Is there something that's wrong? They're going, well, we don't want you playing, and that's the reason why, or what's happening up there? It's because one thing, we're so far away from it all, so we're not seeing and don't have the reporters there seeing what's going on as much as what we normally would. So we're sort of a bit more out of the loop than we normally would be. So it's just a tough one that I guess there's only a very few people that could actually answer what is going on.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess a couple before we wrap things up on the listener question front, and a few of those in regards to trade targets. I keep hearing there is a big fish, whether that's a Zach Williams or something like that, sort of remains to be seen. And I guess players with currency, I'm not sure we'd be necessarily keen to move too many on. But then again, our draft haul isn't probably as strong as it needs to be. But hopefully, I mean, in terms of those trade stuff, all obviously very valid questions, but just out of, I guess, pure superstition, I'd almost rather sort of wait until our season's over before that happens, which we hope it isn't. I guess final thoughts on confidence levels ahead of Friday night. It's a case of, I know St Kilda have been doing those deep breathing exercises at quarter time, but I think we all need to do that a little bit. We're still alive. Obviously, we're in a position we'd like to be in. We could have had our place in the 8 secured already, but it isn't. We've got one more step to do that. It's either a very nervous weekend if they lose on Friday night, or it's a very comfortable watch knowing that you're going to play in a final sort of 12 or so days later after the week off. But how are you feeling when we reconvene? Do you think, Nick, first of all, that when we next do this podcast, we'll be talking about playing in a final?
Well, very, very nervous. I mean, confidence levels right now, they've fluctuated all through the week. Earlier in the week, in my mind, I thought GWS are cooked and they're done, and they've dropped Cornelio and their season's over. Like the things that have to go right for them to make finals is just too much, and I can't see them coming out, firing, and they're just not the same. They're not the same GWS that we've become accustomed to this year, and I think that we've got this in the bag. But as the week's gone on, I'm swinging the other way, and I guess that's the old St Kilda pessimism part of me that sits in the bottom of your heart, and I don't know. I really don't know. I guess that the reality is that we've had our fate in our own hands for a month, right? And we've let it slip a number of times. If we do it again, we don't deserve to play finals. If we win this game, then over the course of the year, we've been one of the top 8 teams in the competition, and we certainly deserve to be there. If we can't win this one, we lose to Melbourne, lose to West Coast when we should have beaten them. If we lose again, then we probably don't deserve to be there in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those ones where I think we're going to sit down 5 minutes before the game and just go, I still don't know what's going to happen. Yeah. I mean, we didn't know what was going to happen with only 5 minutes into the last quarter last week. So it's just, going to be, I think it's going to be a bit of a roller coaster again. Just hopefully it ends up being one of those roller coasters where at the end we get another ride. So hopefully, we'll definitely go in confident enough, but it's just one of those ones we just don't know. And it's going to be hopefully a bit of relief come 10 o'clock on Friday night.
one more win, one more chance for that as well. I know it doesn't all come down to that, but you take destiny out of your own hands if you lose. So fingers crossed, nervous nights ahead, nervous week ahead. But deep breaths, everyone, and fingers crossed we get ourselves through. Thank you to Russell Greene for joining us this week, and let's reconvene in a few days' time and hopefully preview a final in a Queensland hub in a couple of weeks.